Hello, it's time for a new topic of Ryan on Gaming. This is from Raw Comet. He says, so obviously Sony is doing great this generation of consoles, but my question is, how do you feel about this generation as a consumer? I feel that it's been a bit of a disappointment. There's not quite as many as great exclusives as of yet like there was on the PS3. I feel that the PS4 has a lot more potential. Love the vids, by the way, man. Keep them up. Raw Comment, thank you for submitting the topic. As always, I want to thank you for submitting topics because we all know I'm kind of running out of topics for this thing. Yeah, as a consumer, how do you feel? How are we feeling about how the PlayStation 4 is doing? I think there's a couple of things to take away from your submitted topic right away, which is that, I think obviously speaking, PlayStation 3 is a matured platform at this point. It was out for almost 10 years now, so it had a lot of time to mature, because in the same time frame, say the first 2.5 years that the PlayStation 3 was out, which is where the PlayStation 4 is right now, PlayStation 3 didn't have as vast of a library either, didn't have as many great exclusives either, especially PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 had a little bit of a slow start, and it had a lot of mediocre, exclusive releases that we all were kind of banking on, like Layer and Haze, so PlayStation 3 kind of found itself in the same situation. It's the kind of situation with a lot of console launches, that they need time for their libraries to mature a little bit and have some quality games to get released on it. So PlayStation 4 isn't necessarily all that different. Also, another thing to kind of take away from it is that you don't necessarily need exclusives. I mean, that's also kind of a little bit of a weird way to approach it a little bit. I mean, I think games are what you're looking for, right? You want good games. The games don't necessarily have to be exclusive for you to enjoy your PlayStation 4. Just throwing that out there. Not to proliferate some idea, but it's like, they don't need to be exclusive. Games are what matters, quality games. And so let's really talk about that, I guess, which is that, and this is something that was admittedly true for a while now. It's kind of common knowledge in the industry, and it's kind of common knowledge for a lot of people, which is that specifically with Xbox One and PlayStation 4, there is absolutely a lower release of, say, bigger retail, AAA games coming out. Nowadays, especially in the video game industry, it's just harder and harder. A lot of publishers are going under. A lot of developers are finding it very difficult to, turn a profit on their games. Budgets for these games are astronomically high, and the price of games has stayed the same for a very long time now, like over a decade. Games have been about $60 basically, or close to a decade. Inflation is a very real thing, and the price of games has stayed the same. Developers and publishers have to do a lot of different things nowadays to try and get a little more money out of the consumer, which is, those season passes, DLC, all that bullshit, which is for a whole other separate topic. We won't get into that, but it is definitely a lot harder nowadays for games to turn a profit, and for franchises to stay relevant, and for these big publishers to consistently release quality titles, and that's why you look at something on, look at the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube. Those, that generation and the generations before them had a lot of games come out where it's like you're just not going to see that today. You kind of know what I'm saying, the kind of games I don't know, just think of some random racing game from some random publisher. Think of some random platformer from some random developer. You just don't see stuff like that nowadays. The only players that can really stay in this industry are the big ones: Activision, Ubisoft, Blizzard, Sony's publishers. I mean, only a few can really last. So it's absolutely the case when you kind of think about disappointment as a consumer, and the amount of good games that are available, and just flat out the amount of games that are available. And it also goes in mind about there is definitely a big rise in independent developers, because their games are typically a lot smaller. You don't need as big of a team to develop those games, so we're seeing a lot of games like those, and those are always good. But I certainly understand from a point where it's I want the big games. I want to play bigger quality titles, and admittedly there definitely is less of those, and that's because of the realities of business and the industry. So it certainly sucks there. Me personally, nowadays I work a lot, so I don't have a whole lot of time to play games. So even the amount of releases that are coming out now, I can't keep up with. For a lot of these kids that are still in high school or something, middle school, you got a lot of free time after you're done with school or something, and you can burn through games pretty quickly. I can certainly see that. Because back when I was in school, that was totally the case. Every day I was playing games. I was finishing games left and right, and luckily that was a time when I was playing PlayStation 2. There was tons of PS2 games. There was never a shortage of PS2 games, GameCube games. There was tons of stuff to play back then. Nowadays, I can certainly see if that was the case where you had a lot of free time and you just, you could easily get through these games left and right, and you're just like, well, now what do I do? Now what do I play? So I think, especially for nowadays, it's one of those few situations where having a lot of platforms available at your disposal is a better thing, because then you have a lot more stuff to play, and it opens up your catalog a little bit. If you just got one platform, you could easily probably exhaust through it pretty quickly now. I mean, if you just are gaming on a PlayStation 4 and you don't really want all those small, downloadable games on PSN, you might probably burn through them pretty quickly. This is, again, assuming you have a lot of free time. And it's like, back then it was hard to have like multiple platforms and try to keep up with all those games, because there was just so many games coming out left and right. These were full retail games coming out too, so it's not like they were like budget titles. I mean, there was a budget title every once in a while on PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, but you couldn't necessarily afford every single game that came out. But either way, I mean, it's definitely a real thing. I'm just not personally disappointed, because I just don't have the time to even keep up with the amount of releases that come out now. Although I can certainly see it for a lot of people. And that sucks, but it just kind of goes back into what we were saying. The video game industry is changed. And it's just not as easy for developers and publishers to thrive in this business. I mean, there's just really no explanation for it. That's just kind of the way it is. But going back to our original point, PlayStation 4 is still only like 2.5, close to 3 years old now. Same with Xbox One. They still got some time to go. Sony's still got their developers. Microsoft's been doing some pretty great things recently. They're building their developer relations better. They still got time to flourish, mature, and you'll obviously see more releases down the road. It's just that's the thing. Like, it's certainly a real thing that we're seeing like less titles and there's not as much, and it's understandable maybe if you're a little disappointed. But at the same time, it's not necessarily unusual for PS4 and X1 to be in the situation that they're in, because that has absolutely happened previously with pretty much all console launches and all console life cycles. It just takes some time, so that's pretty much the only thing you're gonna have to do is just wait until you get more games to play. Raw Comet, thank you for the topic, and if you have a topic that you'd like me to talk about on this here YouTube channel, my God, people, I would love for you to submit it, because quite frankly, I'm running out of topics. Well, I'm not necessarily running out, but it's like, it's getting a little too low. And it's like, it's one of those things where, say you're playing a game, and it's got some sort of meter in it that you need to like keep up, and the meter's running low. Your instincts kick in a little bit. It's like, oh no, I need to refill this meter. So think of whatever game you could possibly have. Think of whatever game you can in your head that has like this idea of what I'm talking about, this sort of gameplay mechanic. Kind of relate it to what I'm doing now. My topics are getting a little low. I need you to keep giving me more of them. That concludes this episode, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.